The alliance is not scrambling to respond. It is carefully, deliberately reshaping the very rules of Ent. They're not just watching history unfold, they're preparing to write it. Quietly, strategically, and with growing precision, the BRICS alliance is moving with intent, shaping currents of global change that many nations are only beginning to recognize. Once dismissed as symbolic, a footnote in the story of rising economies, BRICS is now stepping into a role that could alter the very balance of power. Boardrooms whisper it. Diplomatic corridors feel it. Closed-door negotiations confirm it. A transformation is underway, and the world is on the verge of a new chapter. From the beginning, BRICS was not designed to be loud. When it was born in 2009, bringing together Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa, it presented itself as a modest counterweight to the G7. Its message was simple. The global order, dominated for decades by the West, did not represent the true scale of human progress, population, or production. But few believed this small coalition could truly matter. To critics, it was a collection of countries with more ambition than cohesion. Too different, too distant, too divided to ever be more than a symbolic gathering. That skepticism would prove short-sighted. Over time, BRICS sharpened its focus. It learned from missteps, adapted, and waited. The West underestimated its patience. Then, in 2024, everything changed. With the historic addition of Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia, BRICS announced itself not as an experiment, but as a force. It was no longer just a forum, it was a bloc with real weight, spanning trade routes, controlling energy flows, influencing populations, and reshaping conversations about the future. The numbers reveal only part of the story. Over 40% of the world's population now falls within its member states. More than a quarter of global GDP sits under its influence. And nearly every continent hosts its footprint. These figures are staggering, but they are not the true story. The true story is where BRICS is going next. 34 countries have expressed interest in joining. 23 have submitted formal applications. It is no longer enough to have resources or population. Nations must align strategically, must offer leverage, must contribute to a vision that stretches far beyond economics. The next wave of consideration includes Bahrain, Malaysia, Turkey, Vietnam, Belarus, Sri Lanka, Mexico, Kuwait, Thailand, and Uzbekistan. Each name is more than a candidate. It is a statement, a piece of a global puzzle being assembled with meticulous care. This surge of interest is not random. It reflects the growing hunger for alternatives to Western-led institutions like the IMF and World Bank, and to the dollar-dominated global system that has long tilted power toward Washington. For many countries in Latin America, Southeast Asia, the Gulf, and Africa, BRICS is more than an alliance. It is an invitation to imagine a new world, a multipolar order where sovereignty is respected, cooperation is horizontal, and growth is not dictated from Washington, London, or Brussels. It represents not just a shift in alliances, but a shift in imagination, a break in the mental map of global politics. Consider the Gulf. Bahrain and Kuwait, small, resource-rich, and historically tied to Western oil markets, are now looking eastward. For decades, their wealth and survival were tied to partnerships with Washington and London. But times are changing. Their strategic control over global energy corridors, combined with massive new investments in digital finance and green infrastructure, make them powerful additions to BRICS's already formidable energy platform. If admitted, alongside Iran and the UAE, BRICS would command not just a share but a majority of proven global oil reserves. This is more than fossil fuels. It is pricing power. It is energy diplomacy. It is the ability to shape markets, set terms, and use energy as leverage in a world still tethered to hydrocarbons, even as it speaks of renewables. In the Western Hemisphere, Mexico could be the game changer. With a $1.5 trillion economy, deeply integrated into U.S. supply chains through the USMCA, Mexico's shift toward BRICS would be nothing short of seismic. For the first time, BRICS would have a foothold in North America. Such a move would fracture the assumption that Washington's dominance in Latin America is permanent. Mexico's entry could open new trade corridors, provide ports that directly connect the alliance to the Pacific and Atlantic, and create a consumer market worth hundreds of billions. More than numbers, it would be a symbol a neighbor of the United States, woven into its economy, choosing to look beyond Washington for its future. Across the Atlantic, Belarus offers something different: geography as power. Sitting at the fault line between Russia and the European Union, Belarus is a logistics hub, a gateway, a connector. It has been both bridge and buffer in the era of NATO expansion and Eurasian resurgence. Its inclusion would hand BRICS a strategic foothold at the very edge of Europe. With infrastructure and deep ties to Moscow, Belarus offers the alliance not just influence, but presence in a space the West long assumed it controlled. Then comes Southeast Asia, one of the world's most dynamic regions. Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam are already giants in global supply chains. They produce semiconductors, electronics, vehicles, and consumer goods. Vietnam alone shipped nearly $370 billion worth of exports last year. Malaysia continues to anchor the global semiconductor trade. Thailand is pouring billions into digital transformation and green technology. Together, they represent not just economic muscle but a shift in political balance. Their alignment with BRICS would give the alliance dominance over one of the fastest-growing markets in the world, while providing a gateway into the larger Asia-Pacific. Further inland, Uzbekistan emerges as a hidden giant. Landlocked yet rich in minerals, strategically positioned at the crossroads of China, Russia, South Asia, and the Middle East, it is becoming essential to new Eurasian trade corridors. Its value is not just in resources but in geography. As China builds its belt and road and Russia constructs its own transcontinental links, Uzbekistan becomes the artery that keeps both visions alive. For BRICS, it is a natural fit, a land bridge, a logistics hub, and a resource well that strengthens the alliance's vision of an interconnected multipolar economy. And then there is Sri Lanka, a nation whose economic troubles made headlines, but whose geography remains priceless. Sitting in the Indian Ocean on some of the busiest maritime routes on the planet, Sri Lanka is a prize every major power covets. China and India already compete for its ports, its infrastructure, its loyalty. For BRICS, it is a node in the grand strategy to dominate not just land but sea. With Sri Lanka, the alliance would extend its grip over critical maritime choke points, ensuring influence across oceans that have long been lifelines of trade. Piece by piece, this is not random expansion. It is careful, deliberate architecture. BRICS is not just adding members, it is building a new world order, a multipolar framework that is both economic and political, financial and strategic. The West sees it, even if it does not admit it. The dollar's dominance is not eternal. The G7's authority is not guaranteed. The IMF and World Bank no longer go unchallenged. What began as 5 nations, mocked as symbolic, is evolving into a system. And in that system, energy flows differently. Trade routes look different. Currencies shift. Diplomacy changes. Influence realigns. For decades, the world assumed Washington and its allies could dictate the rules. BRICS is proving that assumption wrong. The question now is not whether BRICS will rise. It already has. The question is how far, how fast, and how profoundly it will reshape the architecture of power in the 21st century. BRICS is bringing countries together not because they share the same politics, but because they agree on some basic ideas: respect for sovereignty, giving power to many instead of just a few, and building a fairer global economy. Since the Ukraine war began, BRICS has grown faster than anyone expected. Many nations are frustrated with Western sanctions, unstable markets, and unfair systems that favor only a few. For them, BRICS feels like a chance for real change, a place where their voices matter. This isn't about going back to the Cold War. It's about the future. The global system built after World War II doesn't match today's world anymore. BRICS is showing it can be something different, and it's moving quickly. What started as just 5 countries is turning into a real alternative, with nations eager to join and help shape the roles of the 21st century. The main goal is clear: to challenge the West's control over money and trade. BRICS still has problems. Sometimes members don't trust each other or want different things, but it keeps growing because it offers something people want: choice. It doesn't force countries into debt, it doesn't attach political conditions, and it doesn't depend on the US dollar for everything. For nations like Sri Lanka, joining BRICS could mean turning a crisis into an opportunity. Through the new development bank, BRICS is lending money in local currencies, not dollars. That's a big deal. The bank was created because countries were tired of the World Bank and IMF controlling the rules. Now nations can borrow and grow without being tied to Western demands. Using local money instead of dollars also helps them avoid the risks of dollar dependence and systems like SWIFT that the West can use to pressure them. Already about half of BRICS trade happens in Chinese yuan, and that number is rising. There's even talk of creating a shared digital currency for trade, safe, blockchain-based, and outside Western control. If this happens, BRICS could become a true balance to Western power. But BRICS is about more than money. It's about influence. It's about writing the rules instead of following them. Countries are lining up to join because they want partnerships, trade, and a stronger voice. No lectures, no punishments, no sanctions. The US has noticed. Behind the scenes, it's offering weapons deals, trade perks, and security pacts to stop countries from joining BRICS. But many nations now see those offers as old answers to new problems. BRICS feels like the future. Already it has grown from 5 members to 10. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus Indonesia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. That's no longer a small club. That's a global force. Then came Donald Trump's return to the White House in 2025. His first move, huge tariffs. 50% on Chinese electric cars, 25% on semiconductors, 40% on steel and aluminum, even 30% in Indian and Brazilian medicines. His message was clear. America first is back. India called it short-sighted. China called it economic war. South Africa said, "We're done with the old rules." These weren't just trade fights. They were warnings. Trump believes tariffs are just business. America charges, others pay. But his plan is pushing countries away. Even US partners like Mexico, Thailand, and Malaysia are quietly looking for other options. For many of them, BRICS looks more stable, more balanced, and less risky. Ironically, Trump's policies might speed up the very shift he wants to stop. Now BRICS is looking at adding even more countries: Bahrain, Malaysia, Turkey, Vietnam, Belarus, Sri Lanka, Mexico, Kuwait, Thailand, and Uzbekistan. If that happens, it will cover nearly every part of the world: Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East. Its buying power could match or even beat the G7. The message is simple. Countries no longer have to choose between following the West or standing alone. There's a new table and BRICS is setting it up. So the big question is, should countries like Mexico or Vietnam join? Would it open new doors for them or bring new risks? That's the debate now, because BRICS is no longer just about emerging markets. It's about an emerging world.